so what I'd like to do now is to invite you all into another whole group guided exercise. The intention is around, again, the embodiment, to begin to cultivate the sense of an experiential embodiment of particular qualities. When I use the word quality, I use that word as an expression of the felt sense of belonging. And perhaps it takes the form of a need or a value, but it's all the same internal embodiment. Okay. So with this exercise, I'm going to ask everyone to bring to your attention a relationship or a person for whom there is love. Now, sometimes the word love is a word that some people do not connect to. So whatever, it's about the quality. Maybe it's affection. Maybe there's a sense of intimacy in this relationship. Something that you hold dear, perhaps endearment. Whatever that quality is, it's this sense of, in your heart, you experience this in this relationship. So I'd ask each person to imagine this person in your relationship and vividly imagine them, having the imagination be vivid, and actually even allow a play in the imagination of imagining them with you, or just that person doing or saying, somehow reflecting this person in your life. I'll just take a moment to ask you all, and it may be helpful if you close your eyes, if that helps you to connect. You bring this person into your awareness, and I'm going to just say some guiding around what emerges and what possibly might emerge. It may not fit for everybody. But immediately let yourself feel the feelings that emerge, that arise in you. This person, this relationship, there's deep care. There's a quality, a felt quality of love. Notice the feeling tone. Breathe and allow the actual physicality in the body, the sensation connected to the experience of love. And also be aware of other things that might arise. Maybe there's a feeling that is not love. Maybe there is fear, or perhaps even sadness, or some kind of pain that arises for whatever reason. You simply notice it. Let it be there. Always coming back to the intention of being with the quality of love, care, whatever that is. Perhaps there's a thoughts or story that comes up. Notice if you do have thoughts or story around the experience of love with this person, just notice the energy that you feel connected to the thoughts or the story. Can you relax even more, perhaps? Any holding? Allow yourself to feel even more deeply the energy, the feeling of care, of love in relation to this person. You notice the difference between giving love and receiving love. Is there an equal flow, or is there more of one or the other? Just allow the movement. Notice the dynamic of inner experiences. It always moves, changes shape. And stay with the physical sensation of the experience as well. Whatever comes up in your inner experience, whatever shape or form it is, just invite the allowing of it. Invite an inner spaciousness. You can even say the word that resonates with you. If it's love, say the word love and feel the quality of the word as you say it. If it's affection, say affection, care, whatever that word is that is most alive for you in this relationship. Just notice the movement of this inner journey as you're entering into this internal experience. Internal experience of life, of a relationship. It's now readying yourself to slowly shift your experience. Allow a couple of deeper breaths. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, so I'd love to hear anyone who cares to share their experience. Maybe there's a question, or just to hear what your experience was in this exercise. So who would love to say something? Maddie?
I chose my daughter, and when I was in the love, there isn't this sense that it's got to be all equal and giving and receiving. Giving and receiving doesn't exist. There is just love. And then the thought comes in, oh, but she's leaving home. Ow. But actually right now there is love. Doesn't matter where she is or what she's doing or what I'm doing. There is love, and that fills and permeates everything. There is no story, there is no judgment, there was no nothing. It's just love.
Beautiful.
So it was just gorgeous. So thank you.
Wow, I feel grateful hearing you share that experience. Even as you share it, I take it in, and my heart feels like it's warm and opening. Just a resonant feeling. Thank you for that. Yeah. I love, there's something about what you share that's it's sort of like a mystery. It's like the giving and the receiving, it doesn't matter. It's just, there's just such a beautiful mystery to these qualities, these lived qualities in the heart between people. It's just so beautiful to me. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
I feel very shaky right now sharing this. It's a complete opposite from what Maddie has just shared. My son was with me, and I recognize that the care and concern that I feel all the time around him is tinged with fear and worry and anxiety. Just always there's that tinge. Yes, it's just always there. And when I'm away from him and I'm here, he's with me, he's in my heart. He's always with me. But I recognize, I think fully just now, just how much anxiety I hold around him and his life and his lack of life, I guess.
Even as you share that, I'm wondering if this is an internal feeling that you have, these dimensions of care, love, that is always there, present, perhaps unchanging. And there also, at the same time, this fear, anxiety, concern. I imagine because of what you see in his life, because you see perhaps he's making choices, or perhaps doesn't have the resources to support his own wholeness and well-being as you would wish. In the sense that, are you holding both of those with care, with tenderness?
I try, yes,
try
mostly
to,
try to. Yes.
But the edge of the fear and concern is sometimes difficult.
Yeah.
to hold with tenderness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, even if in this moment, if you can sense, if you to feel the energy of fear and concern, if you feel that, just the energy, does the fear take you to the care? You fear,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Yes, it does.
The
Yeah.
fear is linked to the care. You fear because you care, and what you observe is not in full harmony with the sense of wholeness and well-being. Yeah. And perhaps even, I'm wondering if the fear carries a longing for trust, maybe, if that resonates, a sense of...
In a way, trust, for me, if I link to trust, it holds an outcome.
Yeah.
That he will be well.
Yes.
And so, in a way, the trust is almost, not doable.
Yeah.
It's more like just accepting.
Accepting.
But
yeah.
but I know I waver in and out of the accepting how.
The accepting of what is. Yeah. Yeah. And I had a different sense of trust.
Okay.
And just if this resonates, I'm not trying to say that this is something you would experience, but a trust that no matter what, even if he continues to experience what he experiences, a sense of deeper trust in your love, in your care, that is unwavering. A trust that on some level, perhaps, on a level beyond what he experiences, that maybe he is still okay somewhere at the center of his being. A trust to remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, even as you sharing that, as I feel and hear you, I think what's also present there is grief. Is the grief.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that to feel it really is an open-hearted vulnerability, to allow the feeling of grief. Yeah. Great. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you, Robert.
But just with this exchange, it's a reminder that when I enter into and allow this feeling, this experience of what I would call love, care, this deep, open-hearted, almost a sense of communion, of intimacy with another being, that there are other dimensions that arise, that it's not necessarily all wonderful, that there are the way life flows and relationships flows and choices that I or other people make, that it flows into other realities. And that for me, perhaps the most important thing isn't that I always maintain the feeling of the fullness of love, but that I maintain the fullness of my heart. That no matter what arises, the grief, the fear, that there's room for the grief and the fear within my heart. And when I can feel that, I have a sense of a deeper peace within me. The peace that includes fear, the peace that includes grief. There's a kind of incredible peacefulness that doesn't seek always to feel good, but it accepts whatever feeling is there. This is part of the journey for me, the possibility of this amazing, tremendous spaciousness that can feel anything that is humanly possible to feel. Yeah. Is there anyone else that's moved to share anything? Maybe there's a question, anything that's present and alive in you now? Therese, yes.
I'm interested in what you were saying, or what Maddie was saying about love, the giving and receiving, because my experience with that exercise was I have 4 grown-up children, and I found the first one I brought to mind. I noticed that I'm very anxious about him and aspects of the way he's living his life, and I felt myself getting tense. So I thought, right, love. So I went on to another child, and actually focusing on my body, became aware that it was different. As I brought to mind a different one of my children, my body reacted differently. So I was interested in that. So I then went through all 4 of them, and each experience was different. And I was pondering that, and then something you said, I'm not quite sure, it was about the receiving love. And I was aware that my love for my 4 grown-up children is so strong. This aspect of receiving didn't sit comfortably. But one of them who kind of gets me, who I do have a sense of being met by her. So really it's I'm pondering this thing about love and the giving and the receiving, and something about motherhood.
Yeah.
Really, I'm not sure if you can say anything a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Here's what I could say about that, hearing you share around the differences in the unique relationship with each of your 4 children, and then what arises, the feeling sense in your body is different and unique around it. And then I heard sort of a wondering that arose, what is the nature of this unique difference that's in the pondering? And so I don't have an answer to that, but I do have a suggestion around that each unique experience is a doorway. It's a doorway for deeper discovery, to inquire into it, not inquire intellectually, but allow the feeling sense to be your guide. Feel into it, sense into the differences, and wait for something to be given to you. This for me is one of the most valuable ways to inquire into something. It's unknown. Your head will not be able to figure it out. Or if your head does figure it out, I don't know that it's going to give you the deeper understanding that the body and the heart will reveal to you.
And I think I liked what you said about grief, and something around loss.
Yeah.
As a mother, I've given the best part of my life to raising my family, and they're adult, and there's this sense that they are where I always wanted them. They're living in the world, they're living their lives, and then I'm here and they're there. Yeah. And that's the fullness in my heart.
Yeah.
So love, loss, grief, they're very closely connected when it comes to those that I love the most.
Yes, beautiful. And then for me, the question, the inquiry is, the calling of compassion is, can I allow myself to feel all of it? Is there room for all of it? The love, the grief, and all of it.
And in this moment, I think my heart's going to burst with that. The fullness. How can one heart be so full?
Yeah. So good question. Again, I want to discern between where that question is coming from. My experience, my mind will never be able to figure out or answer the question. For me, only the heart can feel into the possibility of feeling all of it. And maybe, isn't there an intensity that you feel that you describe as, my heart feels like it wants to burst? That's an energetic intensity in you. Does that resonate?
Yes, and there's almost, it's almost like a pressure of wanting to do something about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And when they were little, I turned into care for them. And now they're not there. So it's the being and doing we were talking about earlier. And so it's just trying to be with it and the allowing of it, I find challenging when it's something that is supposed to be beautiful and positive, love.
Yeah, but even that, notice that two streams of thought that I heard. The second one, something that's supposed to be love. If I let myself believe that, it constrains my experience to what is, not what's supposed to be. And when I allow what is, I start to feel something different.
I guess I'm wanting it to be this field of giving, receiving that Maddie was talking about. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like that in me right now.
Yeah. So the wanting, perhaps, there's a link to a longing for some quality of open flow, giving and receiving. In the midst, at the same time, it doesn't feel like that, but it feels the way it does. And so the invitation of compassion is to allow however it feels. Just to allow it, to sit with it, to be with it. And if the mind says, oh, I want to do something about it, just listen to that mind, because everything that the mind gives up, there's a link to a longing. I want to do something because maybe I care for their well-being. And then maybe there's a part of me that's not fully trusting that their well-being will be full and intact. I don't know, just some possibilities to listen to those thoughts. Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, so there's a few words I want to say just around, maybe a little clarity around the reason or the intentionality or the value for experiencing the embodied experiences. You know, just a reminder that what I've learned around the principles that are implicit in nonviolent communication and the principles that I share in this work is that everything that we do is an expression of the life force. Another way of saying it's life seeking fulfillment. And so in everything that we do, it's important to be conscious and connected that at the center of it, there are these qualitative experiences that we say are an aspect of a human need, a universal human need, that are an aspect of something that is inherent value. I value honesty, I value authenticity, etc. An expression of a longing. I use all of these terms sort of synonymously. So it's important and valuable to be able to continually cultivate this consciousness, this embodied consciousness that I receive in my relationship and that I communicate and transmit. And that I can cultivate an embodied quality of it. Because it's so easy to initially learn this process, to become familiar with the needs and values and longings. It's so easy to be head-centered around it, which can serve an initial sort of connection with these elements that we call needs, values, longings. But at a certain stage, it limits. You know, if I'm head-centered and I'm trying to connect to a need for me is not something I can figure out. And it's not something that is limited to just one name or one label. So this head-centeredness is gradually shifted into the heart. This is a cultivation, a growing, a capacity building. So just want to name the intention behind these exercises. So having said that, I'd like to ask you all to perhaps think of an experience that you have had recently. And it could be even an experience you're experiencing right now, in which you are enjoying yourself, in which you enjoyed yourself, in which there's a value or something that you valued was fulfilled. And you can link to that experience, in which a need or needs were met. Something like that. So think of experience that you can connect to that perhaps happened recently or is going on right now. So you think of, so the element is you can bring attention to the experience, the event, that which stimulated this awakening, this embodied awakening. Vividly imagine what happened, perhaps what was said, or what the event is, and then feel the energetic sensation of the fulfillment in the body. So I'd just like you to take your time to do that right now. And I may say a few more words. So if you can vividly imagine something that happened in your life, something you did, someone else did or said, that fulfilled a value, met a need or needs, met a longing. And again, this is an inner exploration to feel the energy, sometimes naming the value or the longing can help for a greater connection. Even with a met need or a fulfilled value, there may be thoughts, there may be judgments, there may be concern or fear. If that is the case, observe it, be with it. Notice the quality of expansiveness, flow, or a combination of flow and holding or tension that might be there. And in this experience, the qualitative experience in the body, naming, identifying it perhaps, imagine speaking this, either out loud to life or directed towards an individual or person that is involved with this. Perhaps the person did or said something that was supportive in the fulfillment of something that you value. Imagine the energy of this longing, speaking or acting from this energy in this interaction or relationship. Just stay with the inner experiencing. Stay with the physical sensations without forcing, just allowing. Okay, now just knowing that this is just kind of a short journey, feeling into the potential of further exploration, feeling into the inner experience. Allow yourself a deeper breath. Maybe asking yourself, what is this short journey into this experience? What does it give you? What is staying with you in this little experience right now? And acknowledge it. Okay, so I'd like to hear if anybody wants to share their experience or any question that came out of it. How was this for you?
Yesterday, I got to hold Charlotte Rose by the creek, and it was just me and the baby and the sound of the creek. And what comes to me is this sense of infinity was the only word I could really come to, is because in that moment it was just me and the baby and the creek, and I can hear the creek when you invite me to it. And I can hear the creek in my mind, but I can feel the creek in my heart. And that repeated mantra of the water running over the stone and feeling the baby in my arms. And there's nothing else in that moment.
Beautiful. As you are sharing that experience, what I'm reminded of is just this experience itself, by itself, has inherent value. There's nothing to be added, taken away from it. Then I noticed the sense of the impact that this kind of experience has when I experience something similar in life. Is that, how can I say this? The energies, somehow as though it infused in all of my being, through my nervous system, through my cells of my body. And this is, I'm sort of stepping back and have a sense of what happens. The effect of this, it's not just a temporary feel-good and I do in my ordinary, it feeds me, it nurtures me, as though I'm receiving the nurturance from sort of some life source that takes the form of the creek and the baby and all of that. But there's a deeply nurturing, giving, growing sense that I feel when I have these kinds of experiences. And this, for me, is important to remember, that this work around cultivating this experience is life-changing. Because then I become more and more, when I engage in this practice, my being is more and more immersed and oriented in this bodily, full felt sense. When I'm there, I want to just dwell in it. And then the natural emergence of the experience is just gratitude. So thank you for sharing that. It's just beautiful. I love hearing it. Yeah. Sylvie.
I was going to do the exercise as a good girl and say, oh, I'm going to have access to these wonderful experiences. My son carrying my suitcase yesterday. And it didn't work. I wasn't accessing any wonderful experience. And when you said just let yourself go into what you're experiencing in your body, tears came up because my son moved out of the house 2 weeks ago and our dog died 3 days ago. So there's lots of uncried tears inside me at the moment. And when you said, just let yourself experience what's happening, is they all wanted to cry, all these tears wanted to show up, and there was something like, oh, I can let myself fall into this. And that became the wonderful connecting experience and the joy of allowing that grief to say, hey, I'm here and you haven't heard me enough.
Beautiful. Yeah, the entryway into fullness can be grief. Yeah. Thank you. So I learn, if I want to learn and integrate a way of being, which means often a way of communicating, giving and receiving. Again, I'm sort of just reaffirming or re-articulating a notion that I want to come back to over and over again. That I want to be in a way of communicating that is not necessarily a language-based, but uses language. For me, the language is the carrier of the spirit. It's the carrier of this energy. So that I want to first be founded in and grounded in the essence of these beautiful qualities. And then from this place, and to this place I receive and give. So this is the notion of what I want to come back to over and over again. So it makes somehow it makes the communication, the giving and the receiving, somehow less effortful. Less so that I'm trying to achieve a certain result, and more of a trusting in that whenever I sink into the heart and I can see you in your preciousness as much as I can, it allows something else emerges. So, okay. Anything else moving in anybody you'd like to speak? Gilly?
I was thinking of moments of great joy. I mean, it's so wonderful to be here, and it's so wonderful to be with people like this. And then I was thinking of moments when I practiced and I suddenly have a kind of moment of understanding something that I could do differently on the violin. And it's like a sort of aha moment, and it's wonderful, that feeling. It's kind of intuitive. And then so often what happens is that I think, oh, that was wonderful. I must write it down, or I must do so-and-so. And then fear comes in, or grasping, or wanting. And then after that, my experience in the exercise changed, and I went recently to a funeral of someone who died, who I didn't know well, but she created wonderful concerts in her house in aid of water aid, and there were hundreds of people came, and she also made the most beautiful garden on top of a mountain. And I didn't know her well, but while I was there, it was a Quaker funeral, and everyone was silent, and her body was lying there in the coffin, and I just had this wonderful feeling from her of love filling the whole room, and how she was able to do all those things, to make the garden and to have hundreds of people and give them tea and music from love. She never seemed to make it. I said to her once, how do you do your garden? She said, I do it all myself. And she wasn't young. She was in her 70s. And she said, well, I love doing it. And I had this wonderful feeling of love, which was just wonderful, but makes me cry because I would so love to be able to do what she could do in that way. I'd love to be able to. Or that Gayano is the same to me. Gayano seems able to do from an energy that is. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah. Sense the in hearing your words, a sense of perhaps inspiration and admiration for what you could see this person do with what she created, and that she expressed that it just came from love and she was doing it for herself, and how much you long to live your life in a way that's similar, centered in love, perhaps. Yeah. Great. Okay, well, thank you all. And now let's do a similar exercise, but maybe, a little bit more interesting, I guess. So as we know that that the course of life is such that it doesn't always work the way we want it to work. We experience things that are not in harmony with what we value, not in harmony with what we hold dear. So the phrase that was often used is that was a need that was unmet. But I like the other phrase better because it fits my experience, is that I have within my heart, within me, that which I value, that which is precious. And I live my life, event by event, perhaps relationship by relationship. And there's a flow of sometimes the experience is that this experience is in harmony with what I value, which is the exercise I just asked you to do. And then there are times where it's not in harmony. What I'm experiencing out here doesn't match what I value. And so there is an experience that I have within. Encountering this experience and being with it for me is such a very important part of this spiritual practice of passion and compassion. Can I meet my experience and create the conditions that allow it to transform? So, having said that, I'd like you all to think of a recent experience. It doesn't have to be something big or intense. It can be a little thing in which you experience something that did not match what you value, something that didn't work for you, an experience where there was an unfulfilled need. So just ask each of you to remember that. I don't think it'll be that hard. And so, similar to what we did before, just imagine what happened, and then I want you to pay special attention to the internal experience. There's no right or wrong here, but just observe what is there in your experience. So just vividly imagine the event, whatever happened with the person, or perhaps an event, whatever it might be. Recall it so that you can touch into the present moment experience right now. Not what you felt then, but what you feel now. And notice the felt sense, the energetic physicality in the body first. Just be with it. Just notice what happens in you when you're with this energetic reaction. Is there a recoil? Do you recoil away from the experience? Is there a contracted experience? Notice the element of your thinking or thought. Are you evaluating the person or yourself? Is there a story? Just notice it. It's not about changing it. This is about observing what is. This can be very valuable, to be able to observe what is in the midst of this kind of an experience. Notice the judging mind if it's there. If you can link the thinking with what the body feels like. Sometimes I'm thinking a certain thing and immediately there's a tightness in the body. or there's a tightness that I feel immediately, I listen deeply into that tightness, let it be, and the thinking or story emerges from the sensation. Often the sensation of this kind of experience is something that we label pain. Different variations of pain. This process is now, we're inviting, welcoming whatever experience is there. Are you resisting the experience in any way? Just observe it. Can you identify the value or need, the longing that was not fulfilled? Does naming the value change your experience? Is there an element of seeking, perhaps, looking for a certain outcome? Can you allow yourself to feel the sensation of pain? Even the sensation after you let the label of the word pain fall away. Can you allow yourself to feel the grief or the mourning of this unfulfilled value? Again, just notice the quality of the inner experiencing. Observe if there is any sense of relaxed, open flow. Is there any part of this that might be a holding, a tension? And in this kind of an experience is an opportunity to fully digest the experience, to fully experience it. To relax any defending of the vulnerability. To feel the longing of what is precious in your heart, but perhaps was absent in the event. Just notice your ability to be with the experience, to allow it. Or if you're not able to really feel it, you notice that also. And it's okay. Give yourself permission to feel only what you're able to. There's no pressure, no should around needing to experience anything different than what you're experiencing. Allowing yourself a few deeper breaths, sensing what has there for you in this short exercise, what was more prominent perhaps in what you learned or what was valuable in this exploration, and even perhaps what is there as an unknown or as a question. So just kind of notice all of that. And I'd like to invite bringing your voices into the group again. Just a few people. Is there anyone who would like to share? Even if you haven't shared before, I like to hear new voices. I like the old ones too. Ina?
I was remembering a concert I went to a few days ago, and I'd been attracted to it because it said that there were going to be music and singing English translations of the poems of the Sufi Rumi. I'm sure many of you have heard of him. And I thought, oh, well, this will be lovely, uplifting experience of Rumi's poems, and it will feel very spiritual, and I'll come away feeling full of peace and love. And so I went there, and the pianist was a Norwegian who'd composed this music, and it was full of anguish and darkness and despair and I felt this enormous sense of dread that I would be sucked into this whole feeling of annihilation, really. And I thought, well, maybe the next piece of music will be different. And every piece of music seemed to me, anyway, to be the same. They were all full of darkness. There was no light. There was no escape from pain and suffering. And re-experiencing it now, for instance, one of the pieces said that it was leading to a resolution of hope and comfort. And so I thought, oh gosh, yeah, that's what I want, the hope and the comfort. I didn't hear any hope or any comfort, but re-experiencing it now, I don't think my experience of all this darkness and gloom was wrong in a way, or that it didn't feel like that to most people. But I think that the hope and the comfort must have been at the edges. And because I'd contracted, I was in such agony and pain myself, I was unable to feel the suggestions that were made of hope and comfort, which I just began to faintly hear just now. That's it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were able to feel the experience and feel a dimension that you were not able to before. Perhaps an edge of a possibility of an experience that you perhaps as hope and comfort. And it sounds like a new way or a new dimension for you that entered into this experience now as you revisited it. Is that accurate?
I think in a way the hope and the comfort came out of the feelings of despair. And because I'd closed myself off, I was unable to hear them.
Yeah. Okay.
But I did now.
You did now. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Phil.
I went to a concert a couple of nights ago with a friend, and came out of it and went to get the car from the car park, and the battery was flat and I'd left the lights on. And it's the 4th time I've done that in 10 months, and the 3rd time was only a week ago. And I was shocked and upset, very embarrassed, telling myself that I should be managing this kind of thing. And I was very fortunate my friend was not at all thinking what I was thinking. She was concerned that I was distressed about it. Anyway, it was to do with competence, I believe. My need was for competence. Competence.
Yeah.
And as I'm getting older, many aspects of me are becoming less competent, both physically and mentally. So quite a bit of sadness around that.
Yeah.
And the man who came along to fill up the battery was the same man who'd come out the previous week. This is in a big city, so... But again, he was completely non-judgmental, and this is normal life to him, I think. And this little exercise has helped me get it very much in touch with the competence and the great value I still have in in that, and I thank God for all the competencies I've got. And one little bit of this story is that when my friend and I were talking afterwards about how I might manage it in future to try and stop this happening, I'm going to try singing the first line of Marshall's "See Me Beautiful," and the second line will be "Are the lights off?" So, thank you.
Thank you. Could you hang out, just keep the microphone for a second if you're willing to continue in a short conversation with me about this?
Thank you.
So I heard the two parts of your experience, painful, distressing, embarrassment, because this happened, but it happened several times. And you were able to maybe then or now, I'm not sure, identify what is it that you value so much that was not there as you let the the battery drain, the lights were on, etc. And it's something that you call competence. And so I heard also a grief in that, noticing perhaps other events in which you evaluate yourself as not being as competent as you could be. And so I'm curious about the word competence, because I hear that it is valid and real and it matches a value that you have. But let me just ask you, the word competence means that you're experiencing something in life. And when you are meeting your need for competence, that feels a certain way. There's a value in this experience of competence for you. And when you stay there, what is the value for competence? Why is that important? Not why from the head, but is there another value that's connected to competence? There's a sense that when you're competent, what does that give you?
I think it's maybe to do with acceptance.
Acceptance, okay. Is it self-acceptance or is it acceptance from others?
I'm sure it's both, actually.
It's both, okay.
Yeah.
So if you judge yourself as not being competent, then maybe the deeper need you have is, are you longing to be accepting of yourself? Understanding when you're not able to do things that you can judge as competent. But the deeper need is to, no matter what you do, can you be in a space of self-acceptance? Does that?
Yes, that feels right.
Yeah. So this is an example of how when I stay, or when we can stay with a particular what's evident on one level as a value, like competence, which is real. If you stay there, if that is met or yielded, what is there? Because there's always, for me, almost always an ever deepening something that can reveal itself. And acceptance with yourself, acceptance in relation to others. So there's this one layer there. And then the other thing is when you're don't experience the competence being fulfilled, or perhaps the acceptance. The question for me, and what this work invites me to do, is, can I be with and accept whatever is there? Whatever comes up. I'm embarrassed. Can I sense that embarrassment is my response? That there's a deeper need in my embarrassment. So that's another, perhaps in your embarrassment, you're wanting to know, perhaps, that does the person accept you and not judge you? That, okay. So that there are ever deepening explorations whenever we have this experience of something that doesn't go our way, a value that's not fulfilled. It's an opportunity to delve more deeply into the experience.
Thank you, Robert.
Great. Thank you, Phil. Okay. Maybe time for one more, if anybody wants to share. Nancy?
I'm going to be co-leading, I'm going to be leading a retreat with another woman. I've invited another woman to come along and do a retreat with me. I won't go into all the details, but I then saw, she sent me a picture from her Facebook, this beautiful picture of this place, and that she's leading the retreat. So I had this quite strong knee-jerk reaction, like, well, that needs to change, which we were meeting anyway. We had arranged to meet anyway. So the long of it is that in this conversation about when we would meet and get together to plan this retreat, et cetera, it came up about this picture and this that she had posted, and I wasn't really very good about how I was very indirect about how I wanted her to change what was on there, because it just couldn't sort of admit that I felt upset that I hadn't been included. So I felt very left out, and a loss of control around it all, because in a way I had invited her, so it was all felt very awkward, and of course I don't think I was very careful about how I expressed that. She got very upset and hung the phone up. I can't talk now. So it was really a struggle, and she called me back, and we kind of talked it through, and it all changed, and there was resolution. But what I'm realizing, one of the things that I'm left with is, this feeling of walking on eggshells around certain people, that how careful you have to be, because I can't afford for that to happen on the event itself. So there's now a bit of a worry, a fear about trust, and so it's brought up other things that I'm struggling with as well. So it's about communication and sort of maybe being able to recognize what I need to value in myself before I speak, so that it comes across as an honest request, as opposed to a demand, as opposed to a reaction, and that's difficult. For me, that's difficult, is to catch something that's emotive and communicate it from a place of it is concern. But that sort of got bypassed. It all got, it didn't come from that place at all. So she didn't really understand either, I don't think, why it was difficult, why I found that upsetting.
Yeah.
I mean, she did in the end, but so that was very difficult.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in everything you said. The difficulty, the reaction, for me, I found the reason why this is so important to do this inner work first is unless I heal my own inner reaction first, I heal that, I allow the judgments to come, I feel the pain of what was missing, I feel the sense of I long for inclusion before this choice is made. There's collaboration, I really value being included, and I sense into that preciousness of that value. And I feel that. When I feel that, I will almost always feel some kind of sadness, some undefended grief. That will let me be in a place of readiness to communicate.
Yeah.
Unless I feel that, I'm not a whole lot confident that I'm not going to express my upset in a way that the person inevitably will feel defensive about.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Exactly, yeah.
And then my vulnerability often leads me to the sense of this recognition of this principle that she did what she did out of innocence, out of doing what she could do that she thought would support you and her, and given her resources that would fulfill whatever needs and values that she had. Perhaps even in that recognition, there wasn't what you were wanting. But it helps me to then maybe even empathize, offer compassion for her and her choices, and let her know that I see that. There's a lot going on in the dynamic of what can happen. Just that the part of it that stands out for me is that recognition.
Yeah, and I think what happened for me was I was not able, I didn't allow myself to recognize my grief and sadness.
Yeah.
It was easier somehow to stay with indignation and righteousness, and actually it got worse.
Yes, of course. Oh yeah. I think we all kind of know that, James. so much easier to say with indignation and righteousness, and I've been wronged, and how dare you,
and you need to hear me.
Right? Yes, all of that. We're all familiar with that voice, so we all have our own version of it, I think. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so I'm looking at the time, and I think now would be a time to complete our morning time together. And I guess I wanted a little bit more, an expression or two of your experience this morning, how it was for you as kind of an introduction to our 3 days. I'd like to know how it sits with you. How was this for you? And I'd like to hear a couple of people who care to express your experience this morning.
A wonderful introduction. Thank you very much, and I feel very sort of primed to then keep playing with these very simple but very profound ideas that you're offering. I think one thing for me that sort of jars as someone who never used to be able to think, and I spent a lot of time learning how to think well, and it sort of hurts that we value the heart but not the head. And I guess that's the only thing that's jarring for me a bit, is I think that they're both unbelievably precious.
Yeah. I'm wondering if in that experience you call jarring, of valuing the heart but not the head, was there anything in what was communicated today that led you to the conclusion that we don't value thinking?
I think it's the prioritizing of the heart. And in some ways, on one level, I do understand from your explanation earlier on what you're talking about with the heart. But there's still something in me that the mind is going to get in the way and somehow damage that which is most essential and most beautiful. Yeah.
So that sense of the mind getting in the way, that it could damage what is more essential, that sort of is maybe a little jarring, because what you value is a certain quality of thinking or the mind's actions that can actually support and serve us rather than hinder us.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I suppose somewhere the idea that all is mind in the biggest possible sense of that.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a habitual prejudice that I'm holding against the sort of over heart, under head. Okay. But I think that's just...
Okay, thank you. Hearing what you're saying, it prompts me to share a little bit about, of course this is a rather large topic, but I'm just going to hint a little bit about it, that for me, calling it the thinking mind is the part of the evaluative, analytical, thought-centered mind. And there's two ways in which I can experience the mind. And one is that if it's separate from the heart, in a rational, disembodied way of thinking, then it impedes the fullness of experience. For me, there's a recognition, there's no judgment in that. And then there is, for me, the beauty of thought when it's centered in the heart. That somehow thought then, and words and language, then carry the spirit of the heart as carriers. And so I highly value the clarity and intellectual being able to discriminate and make distinctions that can only be experienced with a certain kind of intellect and cognitive clarity. But I don't want the cognitive clarity to disconnect me from the fullness of being. So that's the kind of, it's a change in relationship. When thought is centered in separation, then it functions in a certain way. When thought is an expression of wholeness, then it functions in a very different way. That's kind of the distinction that I hold.
Can I add something else?
Yeah.
I think it's personal for me, is that just my body has always been so uncomfortable in a number of different ways. So there's sort of the invitation to feel it in my body is normally an invitation to discomfort, dis-ease, and so on. And that's certainly changing at the moment, but it seems to be that's part of almost my karmic journey, that I have a lot of discomfort in my body that just irritates, that niggles, and I think a lot of what you're offering is also a way of transforming that. So I'm
absolutely great.
Thank you.
Thank you for naming that last part. Rhonda.
I just want to share that I really have enjoyed the whole group exercises. I was holding my own energy, but it was comforting to know that everyone around me was doing the same exercise at the same time in sort of a guided meditation way. I want to share that feedback.
Great, thank you. I enjoy hearing that. Okay, Cleona, we'll complete with your sharing.
I'm really enjoying the pace of learning and the spaciousness between the meditations and the time to interact with people and then the time to interact with the whole group. And I've written so much stuff down and I'm trying to remember everything that you say, but I'm just enjoying this different way of experiencing things, which is completely the opposite of how I've habitually tried to protect myself. And just this, it's very freeing. It's very nice to hear.
Beautiful.
And learn. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Let us resume at 2:15. And what I'd like to introduce then is a paired or dyad meditation process on this process. And so I'll describe it then. We'll get a couple of people in front of me who will demonstrate it, and then it'll create an opportunity for you all to practice this dyad process, dyad meditation process in pairs. Okay?